I think he's still going to be here at the start of the regular season. Why? Because he's a first round pick. Let's face it. If he's a sixth, seventh round pick, he's out. He's out long ago. But that's the level. Works both ways. You know, I tell you this all the time with Derek Barnett, Jody. If he was a third round pick, nobody'd have a freaking problem with him. Nobody. Zero. People would have. They'd have a problem with some of the stupid penalties. But other than that, nobody would have a problem with him as a player. They have a problem with him because he was the 14th overall pick in the draft, and there's expectations that come along with that. Same thing with Jalen Reagor. Same thing with any failed first-round pick in any other city.
John McMullen and Jody McDonald, a.k.a. Mac here on Birds 365, a football Monday. This would be day 76, but we have to wait until the NFL season gets underway. Game 1, Eagles-Lions. We are exactly 30 days away. Yesterday was 1 month and 31 days in July, which means we were at 31. 30 days until the Eagle camp opens up, and that's something we'll talk about with our guest, Dave Zangaro, because he'll be out there on the grass with John McMullen on July 26th when they get their camp actually opened up. And show 305. We've been doing this for a while, McMullen and I. So looking forward to continuing to add to that. Add to the show number and subtract from the number of days to when football comes around. J-Mac, part of leading up to the season is getting opinions out there, rankings, ratings, looking into what a team has done as far as roster-wise during the offseason. And your outlet, Sports Illustrated, like NBC Sports Philly, where Dave Zangaro works, will join us coming up in about 20 minutes from now. Everyone's coming up with their Eagles top 25 list. And you and Eddie Kratz talked about it last week when we had Head Football Kratz on to close out the week on Friday with us here on Birds 365. And you guys had started to put out your combined list. You and Kratz sat down together and went back and forth over the Eagles top 25 and did some number crunching to come up with your top 25. Where did we leave it last week? Had we just revealed who you guys had at number 25?
Yeah, we revealed 25 on in which was Jack Driscoll, and then I foreshadowed who 24 was going to be, and I said you're not going to be very happy, so you figured that one out. So Derek Barnett at 24, 23, Kaiser White. Maybe I would argue a little bit low for my taste. And then 22, Quez Watkins, who would be a little bit high. As he said, I had him at 25. Evidently, we should have Greg Ward on there. So who knows? Maybe that's coming up today at number 21. So that'll be out at some point today.
Now, you know, I was president of the Greg Ward fan club last year on Birds 365 in the friggin' Delaware Valley, as a matter of fact. It was me, then Greg Ward's family, and then anybody else who lined up behind us. I just don't know if their Eagles are even going to give him a chance to. He's going to be on the roster. He's going to give a chance to make the team. I surely don't think he's going to be a big-time producer for them. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe I just remove this tape and wipe it from existence where I didn't completely back Greg Ward, but I saw what happened last year, and I think I have to say I would be surprised if that were the case.
He's up against it more because Zach Pascal's here, and Zach Pascal's a big, the head coach is a big fan of Zach Pascal. He's going to play in the slot. He's, a blocker. They're a good running team. So I would think it's even less likely that Greg Ward gets an opportunity this year than last year.
Right. If he didn't get it done last year, they've upgraded the wide receiver. They brought in a wide receiver 1, which knocks him down the list. They brought in a coach's pet wide receiver who's going to get a chance to play just because he does everything that the coach like. I don't see Greg Ward making the team, but we just had Emery Hunt on who said he should be the guy who's their slot.
Oh, it's a different, a different coach, probably a different mentality. There is, fitting certain schemes. If Doug was still here, I think Greg Ward would have a bigger opportunity. I do think there is something, especially when you get to the back end of the roster, there's something to coach's preference. And I think that hurts Greg Ward and the shift from Doug Peterson to Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I can't believe that he didn't land in Jacksonville with Doug Peterson. Instead, they gave all that money to Christian Kirk. I'd rather have Ward for veteran minimum than what the hell they paid Kirk to become their
Now,
number one
Christian
wide
Kirk,
receiver.
I'm with you. I mean, the contract is silly, but that's still a good player. I mean, he's getting killed because of his contract, and that's part of it. I mean, if somebody offers it, you're not going to walk away from it, but he is a good receiver, Christian Kirk. He's just not a star receiver that should be making
Right.
that money.
He's a solid wide receiver. I like him coming out of college, but and I read your piece on JAKIBSports.com over the weekend, and I was in lockstep with you. For those who didn't catch it, you got to go to JAKIBSports.com, read John's piece. And if you missed it last week, Andrew Brandt was here with us on Birds 365, and we love having Andrew on. He's always great whenever he joins us. He did mention to us while we had him on that maybe some teams in the National Football League were not happy with the Eagles with the contract that they lavished on A.J. Brown. A lot of wide receivers got paid during this offseason, and A.J. Brown was one of them. And Andrew pointed out, yeah, but Tyreek Hill, this was the third contract that he was signing. Devontae Adams, this was the third contract that he was signing. With A.J. Brown, it was the second contract that he was signing, still on his rookie deal, and the Eagles extended him in their second contract, and that the number was pretty damn big, and that there are some teams around the National Football League that are going, wait a minute, you're set. There's the bar for wide receivers overall, and then there's the bar for wide receivers with steps along the way, and whatever number contract you're on, you would expect it can continue to go up. I was with you, J-Mac. No, it wasn't A.J. Brown that caught people's attention. It was the free agent contract that Kirk got down in Jacksonville that I think had more of an effect on setting the bar at the pay level for the wide receiver position. I understood that the bar was set with A.J. Brown. Oh, by the way, the other signings had already taken place. The extensions had already been done with Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. Granted, they were their third contracts, but the number had already been put out there. No, Jacksonville was ahead of the game. They did the Kirk contract before any of those other contracts took place. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
He was the contract that was signed this offseason that reset the wide receiver market more so than A.J. Brown.
Yeah, more so than Kansas City says it. I mean, they said it was more Devontae Adams, but Kirk was first, and then Devontae Adams. And Kansas City thought they had an extension all but signed, sealed, and delivered with Tyreek Hill. And then the Adams trade happened, and Hill's like, whoa, wait a second. And then all of a sudden, a week later, less than a week later, is in Miami with that big contract. But this is what the Eagles do. The only difference was that A.J. Brown was in another city. I mean, it was here, and that's what I kind of said. Think about if they drafted him in 2019, right? And he turned into the same player. Well, what they do with the 2018 picks they like? Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, Dallas Scott. They signed him early, right? They extended him early. It would have been A.J. Brown's turn. So the fact that they've made mistakes in evaluation of wideouts, the penalty for the Eagles was they had to give up a first-round pick,
right?
And they had to do it early. So they had to do it in April instead of September 10th, because September 10th is the day the Eagles got the first extension done. Well, it's the day before the regular season. So I think it was somewhere there about
first week, first 10 days.
That's when they signed Jordan Mailata. Nobody had a problem with that. So if they had drafted A.J. Brown, given him this contract the day before the September 10th this year, the day before the regular season Detroit, nobody would have a problem with it. So, if they have an issue, maybe look elsewhere, is what I kind of said.
And I followed your line of logic, and I agree with it across the board. And again, a lot of times we talk a lot of Howie Roseman here on Birds 365, as you would well expect. And both John and I are more fans than detractors. Again, that's to me a feather in Howie Roseman's cap, in that he corrected a wrong. And some people refuse to give someone credit. Well, if he didn't make the mistake in the first place, he wouldn't have to correct it. Yeah, but there are people who make mistakes and live with those mistakes and continue to pound those mistakes. To Howie Roseman's credit, at least he tries to correct those mistakes or solve those mistakes. And that's what he did with A.J. Brown during this offseason. Would they have needed A.J. Brown if they had taken Justin Jefferson instead of Jalen Reagor?
No.
Probably not. We get that. Oh, okay. So you want to just sit around and continue to whine and moan about, oh, my God, that was a god-awful draft pick? No, you got to go out and correct it. And that's exactly what Howie Roseman did at the wide receivers position this offseason.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there's, you get too caught up in hand wringing. You got to fix the issue. And I have a bigger problem with GMs, and this is, Howie's been guilty of this as well. All GMs are guilty of hanging on to first round picks. We're talking about it with Jalen Reagor, still here. I think he's still going to be here at the start of the regular season. Why? Because he's a first round pick. Let's face it. If he's a 6th, 7th round pick, he's out. He's out long ago. But that's the level. Works both ways. I tell you this all the time with Derek Barnett, Jody. If he was a 3rd round pick, nobody'd have a freaking problem with him. Nobody. Zero people would have. They'd have a problem with some of the stupid penalties. But other than that, nobody would have a problem with him as a player. They have a problem with him because he was the 14th overall pick in the draft, and there's expectations that come along with that. Same thing with Jalen Reagor. Same thing with any failed first-round pick in any other city. There are expectations that come along with it, and that's part of it. And it works both ways when it comes to the front office. That when you've made a mistake, your best path forward is admitting you made a mistake.
Right.
I mean, that's just the way it is.
All right. Let me ask you about another potential pet peeve I have with general managers in the National Football League. And yes, Howie Roseman under more scrutiny than anybody else here on a show like Birds 365 in a town like Philadelphia. Undrafted free agents. Yes, there seems to be at least one guy who makes the Eagles every single year, and it almost seems to be a badge of honor that if an undrafted free agent makes your roster, has some kind of contribution to the team, more often than not in special teams, but you take it anywhere you can get it, offense, defense, or special teams. The Eagles have, I don't want to say intentionally made sure that they kept an undrafted free agent, but sometimes it seems to play that way. This year's crew, the guys who the Eagles did not draft, we get down to the end of the preseason and you've got that cutting edge of the roster. Are you going to make the roster? Are they going to try and sneak you through to the practice squad? There's that balancing act. How many undrafted free agents do you think are going to make the 53? Because you know how volatile it is. I really do enjoy doing shows that week, be it on the radio or be it here with you on Birds 365, on who gets released, who gets kept, who gets brought back, who gets scooped up. It really is fun. It usually doesn't decide who's going to win the Super Bowl, but it is something that you can sink your teeth into in September after they play that last regular preseason game. How many guys do you think the Eagles are going to keep as far as undrafted free agents on the original 53-man roster?
I always put the over under at 2. In theory, this team is pretty talented now. They shouldn't have the need for a lot of undrafted free agents. Then you start looking at past, like, okay, where is there an opportunity for an undrafted guy? Last year was Jack Stoll, right? The Eagles needed a sort of a And at the time, they still had Zach Ertz, but they still needed more of a blocking sort of aspect, and he was able to make the team. Um, this year it's Carson Strong. I mean, he's got an easier path than even Jack Stoll last year. I
Yeah,
mean, the Eagles.
they can't. I'm sorry to interrupt. They can't expose him, can they? Can they get him
It
through to
kind of
the
depends.
practice squad? How much did they give him? 300,000 as a
Yeah, a
guarantee to sign?
little bit over 300, which is an indication as well. But it's easy to cut 300. It's easy to cut any rookie. Um, it's easy to cut a rookie late round day 3 draft pick. So I do think sometimes we overblow those guarantees. Other than it's an indication that there was probably um, sort of a battle. Other teams were interested, so you got to go a little bit higher. After the draft, you have these battles for undrafted free agents. And it happened. The Eagles also signed the kid from Brown, EJ Perry, is it? I forget his name. You remember right after the draft, we're looking at they signed both quarterbacks, probably the two best undrafted quarterbacks. And what it turned out to be is the Eagles had offers out to both, and Strong was kind of hedging, and Perry accepted his, and then Strong came back and said, "No, I'll come in." And then the Eagles had to go back and say, "Look, Carson's our guy, not that Carson, but this
Right.
Carson." And he wisely went to Jacksonville, and he'll have an opportunity there. Reed Sinette's the third string quarterback. There's every opportunity. I think the only question mark on Carson Strong with the fit, and you don't often say this about undrafted players. The only question is he healthy? Is the knee okay? If it is, he's going to make this team. He's going to make this team as the developmental quarterback, and then you have your undrafted free agent. Howie can say, "Look, I got an undrafted guy." Then you start to say, okay, what's the next guy? And I don't see, we were talking about the corners. They signed these corners who Josh Jobe had a draftable grade. A lot of people had Goodrich from Clemson, Josh Blackwell from Duke. And we said, well, now the Eagles have corners. They brought in Bradbury. They have the Tay Gowans, the McPhersons, the young corners they talked about before they got Bradbury. Now it becomes much more difficult for them. The one guy I would bet on, people want, if you can get this bet somewhere, the prop bet of Eagles undrafted free agent is Noah Ellis, who was the stepson, I believe, of Luther Ellis, the old Detroit defensive end. Who was a Pro Bowl player back in the day. His brother's here, Christian Ellis, is already here as a linebacker. The reason why is because I'm trying to, 6'4", 346, the Eagles list him as. They don't have a backup for Jordan Davis. I've talked a lot about, they brought in this particular player, Jordan Davis, for a reason. They haven't had this player. They want this type of player. And if you want that type of player, you also need a backup for that type of player. And he's the only kid, and he also had a draftable grade. That's part of it as well. And they gave him a lot of money for an undrafted free agent. So if I had to bet on somebody other than Carson Strong, it would be Noah Ellis.
Here's where you and I will part company a little bit. And we know how good the relationship is between the general manager and the owner. They are tight. If the Eagles have a roster situation and they make a judgment call and say, listen, we can get Carson Strong through to the practice squad and we'll be okay there. Don't think anybody's going to scoop him up. And they're wrong. And somebody else does sign him, and he ends up on somebody else's roster. Because on the practice squad, if you assign someone there, well, the team can just come in and pick you off. The only requirement is they have to put you on their 53-man roster. If some other team does that, I think there will be a conversation between the owner and general manager that goes something along the lines of, Wait, how much did we give this guy to sign? $300,000?
Yeah.
And that counts
that's the
against our
one
salary
thing.
cap, even though he does not play a down for us in a Philadelphia Eagle. He doesn't even stand on the sideline in a Philadelphia Eagle uniform during a game. Really, Howie? You gave him $300,000? I think Jeff
I don't
would be
think
within his rights to ask that question of his general manager.
I think that's one of the reasons Jeffrey Lurie is a very good owner. He's not going to complain about stuff like that. And Ellis, I just like he got 240 grand, which is a lot for an undrafted free agent. Eagles went through this with Noah Tagai, and everybody lost their freaking mind. They wanted to get him through the practice squad, and everybody, oh my God, Indianapolis signed him, and they got him back, and he's back into the roster. He's probably not even going to make the team.
And the thing that made me nuts about that, John, was they had Ertz and Goddard here. It wasn't like Noah Tagai was going to break through and play anytime.
Yeah, I know.
He was buried on the roster,
Yeah.
at least with Carson Strong. Yeah, I know that he's not even going to be the backup this year because the Eagles had their backup quarterback, but his future is 12 more months in this town, and then he's going to be gone too. And you've got a starting quarterback that you're not locked in contract-wise. Carson Strong's got a real chance to someday be the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Knowing the guy had no chance to become the starting tight end of the Eagles. So I would not compare those two situations.
Yeah. 320 grand is what Carson Strong got. 240 for Noah. Kennedy Brooks got 240 as well.
Did he?
Yeah. You know, and a lot of it like Carson, because Carson Strong got 20 grand to sign and 300 of his base salary is guaranteed. It's a drop in the bucket. Now, where it is a difference, Jody, if this were, we had this conversation a little bit with Andrew last week as well. If this were Cincinnati, if this were the Chargers, yeah, maybe they would have a conversation. I mean, that's one of the positives of having somebody like Jeffrey Lurie as the owner who really does just want to win. And he's looking to unearth the best possible, diamond in the rough. And he's going to, that's budgeted in to the Eagles. All right, didn't work. All right, we'll try it again next year.
And I hear what you're saying. Jeff Lurie's not going to bat an eye about the money coming out of his pocket. But I do think he likes to play general manager a little bit. Howie's his guy, and he trusts Howie, but that's $300,000 dead cap money that we're dealing with this season. I think it has more to do with the overall use of the salary cap than it does, hey, that's $300,000 out of my pocket. Jeffrey knows there's an expense to being an NFL owner, and I don't think he bats an eye at what that expense is, but I think he likes to play along with who's using their salary cap space the best. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Coming up next, we got our buddy Dave Zingaro from NBC Sports Philly. We'll talk the wait till camp opens up. They've got a good top 25 list going as well. Eagles conversation with Dave Zingaro of NBC Sports Philly next here on Birds 365.